All right, everybody, we have a very special guest, as so many of my guests are. Like, this has been an amazing experience interviewing some of the best people I know. And just another one today, another amazing dude, Dave Lykken. How the heck are you?
Good. Good to be here with you, Ken. You're an amazing dude.
It's so good to have you.
One amazing dude talking to another. What can you say?
Oh, my gosh. Well, I think this is awesome because you've had probably the longest running podcast in the mortgage industry, I would assume.
Yeah, I think Savage and I are right up there pretty close. We have to check the month, but it was the same year. Yeah, it's 15 plus years.
Oh my gosh. So Lykken on Lending's been around for a while. You have been in the business for how long?
50
years.
Which just means my time in the industry is longer than most people alive that's in the industry today.
You've got me by 2 years. So when I was -2, you got in the mortgage business. That is amazing. No wonder you know everybody in the industry because you've been around long enough where you would have run into them at some place.
1973, started in Seattle, Washington. Yes, at a bank.
My gosh.
Got right into the mortgage.
And so you've seen, you saw the 80s.
Oh, yeah. We lived through it. Yeah. I was originator at that time. Yeah.
Oh my! So you've been through a lot of cycles.
The cycles can make you dizzy, and I wish it was just a cycle. It's the ups and downs, what we call a cycle, and it's this roller coaster. But this one has been more than anything we've ever experienced before, Ken. Everyone says this is not as bad as it was in 2008, and well, it depends on what perspective you're coming from. But this one's pretty pronounced and has more trauma associated with it than any of the other cycles.
Yeah, and to give people kind of a background for you, right now, and for a long time now, you have been an advisor through a lot of the decision making in the mortgage industry. So I'm always blown away that you usually know what's going to happen before anything happens because you're in the conversation. And then after something becomes public, you're like, well, yeah, here's the situation. Like you have so much you can't share because you're in these conversations, but it's for you to say that is big.
Confidentiality is the death of a consultant. So yeah, I get calls on, we're thinking about closing, we're in this trouble, I get calls from warehouse lenders saying, we suspect there's been an embezzlement at this company. Can you go in and take a look at it? If you it's just the amount of information that I get that you just learn to hold things as strict as a confidence. And I think that's an important part of this business anyways, a core value. But I get privilege, you could say privilege. Most of the time it's good, exciting news of what's coming up and happening, but there are occasionally those times where you get the really negative news and you go like, yeah, the world's ending and I know about it. It's not quite that bad, but it feels like it, right?
Right. So are you, when somebody calls you and goes, we got a problem, are you first just like explore mode? Like, let me ask you a billion questions and see?
Great. That's a great question. A lot of it depends on how you're wired. And so I love Patrick Lencioni's The 6 Working Geniuses. If people are not familiar with it, they must. So my working genius is in innovation or invention, and then galvanization. So what I first do is going to problem solving. I'll listen to a problem. I listen to it like, ever heard this before? And after you've been in the industry for 50 years, there's not a lot of new twists that you haven't heard before. No matter what the circumstance are, it's a mutation of something that's already been there before. So there's really nothing new under the sun per se, at least nothing new under the mortgage sun. And so it's then pulling on the knowledge and expertise that I have over all these years, or whether I was involved in it directly or read about it or got to know the people that went through a particular experience that someone else is experiencing, that really I'm able to bring that knowledge and that sense of history to it. Not that you always approach every situation the same. But anyway, so yeah, we've been through a lot of those cycles, and this one, again, is a bit unique.
What makes it unique?
Well, it's the sudden rise that we went to. We went to levels of unprecedented profitability only to crash through the floor 18 months later. Last year, the only profitable quarter we had was the first quarter, and it was a miserable little bitty 5 basis points profitability. Second quarter was negative 5 bips. The next quarter was negative 20 bips. And the MBA released recently on March 17th, released the negative average basis points for a independent mortgage banker, and it was a 99. And so that number is unprecedented. And we've never had 3 back-to-back quarters. We didn't ever have 2 back-to-back negative quarters.
No way.
Yeah. So that's why this one makes this one so pronounced. And we're going to have definitely going to have a negative in Q1, which means we'll have 4 back-to-back quarters. Now, everyone's hopeful that we're going to have a positive second quarter in 2023. We're just finishing up this week. The Q1 with October 31st. And so we're going to see where this one's at, but it's fairly certain that this one's going to be a loss. So again, why is this? And it's because so much money was made in the previous couple of years when rates were so artificially low. And now that they're rising, all the refinances are gone, and a lot of people that got in during that time or more recently have not seen one of these markets, and they're really struggling. Yet we have others that are prospering in this time. So it's really, again, it's perspective and experience.
What's the difference between those that make it and those that don't?
I think
in any cycle, in any of these.
I mean, it really it's experience is really what it comes of. You can go outside. You say, why do some patients die on the operating table and others don't? Maybe it has to do a lot with the doctor who's doing the surgery. He knows not to cut here and do this and do that. I think that's an edit. Why do certain planes crash? The number one reason airplanes crash is because the lack of experience flying the airplane. Why do certain companies succeed in markets like this and others don't? It's because it has to do with experience. And I mean, without trying to be self-serving, I think this is why it's so important people reach out to those of us that have this level of experience and are still in the game. There's a lot of people that have this level of experience, but they're all playing golf and they're not giving back to the industry. I'm addicted to this industry, and I really feel a responsibility to give back, Ken, and that's what I love doing.
You know, that I often joke with my wife that we need to get a husband because I can't do anything around the house. Yeah. And I did a garbage disposal a few years ago using YouTube to tell me how to do the garbage disposal. And I did a pretty bad job. And at the end of the day, it works. But if I would have gone 2 weeks later and swapped out a different garbage disposal, I would have done it twice as fast with fewer problems and less parts left over that I'm like, should this have gone somewhere? Yep. So you're saying the more times you've been through something, obviously the more wisdom you gained from that experience. And so sometimes it just takes things not working for you to be ready for the next time something doesn't work.
Yeah, and that's absolutely the case. And I think here's another thing I've learned about life and business. I think what comes naturally to you, you struggle the most to be able to impart that knowledge onto someone else because it comes naturally to you. I do a lot of public speaking, and a lot of people say, why did you say that at this moment, when they ask this question, why did you say that? And I go, I don't know. It just came out. And yet if I really struggled with public speaking or struggled with that, then I would be able to say, I came to this, I connected this, I did this. I had a process because to learn how to do it. So for me, sales and loan originations came really naturally for me, but I wanted to own my own mortgage company. And that was like one of my goals. I'm going to get rich owning my own mortgage company. And so, and the real why I do what I do is because I'm real passionate about home ownership. I really love helping people get in a home. That's really it. The money should be a result, and it was for me. So I love doing it for that reason. But I did want to own my own mortgage company. What I found is learning secondary marketing, learning operations, learning all the complicated behind after the sales has been accomplished, that was really difficult for me. Really, really difficult. And nonetheless, I learned it because if you're going to run your own mortgage company, you better understand how a warehouse line works, how accounting is done, how loans are all the way through the entire process underwritten, docs drawn, shipped, sold into the secondary market and make money and service a loan. I mean, I learned all of that and I learned it really well, but it did not come naturally. And that's the part that's so important. So when I go to someone and I'm listening to someone, one of the things I use as a qualifier, if I'm going to get their services, is what I'm asking you to advise on. Is this something that comes naturally to you, or is it something that you had to really apply yourself to learn? If it's the latter, I'm probably going to have a better educational experience or a transfer of knowledge because they're going to be able to walk me through systematically why they do or why they recommend what they do. So it's just really interesting about how what we can impart better. It's what comes hard or what comes easy.
Gosh, that's so good. I think that speaking thing is funny because I just had this conversation yesterday where I was talking to someone about my favorite scene in Good Will Hunting, which it's hard to pick one. It's my favorite movie of all time. But that one scene when they're sitting there drinking coffee and he says, Mozart could, see notes, he could just play. Like, he doesn't know why, he just could play. And I always say that's speaking for me and for you. I can't tell you why I stand up and rock a crowd. I can just tell you that's what I do or how I did it. Like, it's why I hesitate to teach speaking lessons, because it's like, well, if you don't know, like, if you have to figure it out, then should you be doing that in the first place? But also, if I had to work on it, I'd probably be a better teacher, because I had to do all the steps and figure that stuff out. It's not a natural thing.
You raise a really good point there, because someone like us that do public speaking, I've listened to you. You're an amazing speaker, and not only that, especially when you're doing something like NMLS training, research. I mean, we're getting their continuing education. And that is like sticking bamboo shoots up their fingernails. Who wants to sit there and do that? It's like taking driver's ed after getting a speeding ticket versus having to pay a fine. Who wants to go do that? But those that can impart that in the most effective way, but while in the stickiest way, are going to be the ones that are most successful. And you're brilliant at that, Ken. And I think it also, does that mean you shouldn't become really proficient on speaking? I've had to go back and take a lot of courses on speaking and learning how to get a cadence down, how to have a vocal punctuation and when speaking. And there's just a lot of things you learn and how to be even better at what you do. So I'm not telling everyone just go find something you suck at and go do that, because you'll learn it really well. And it's true. But I think it's also for those that are really things that come naturally to us, we really need to double down and triple down on our learning and why, and to be even more effective.
Yeah, I want to go back to something you said about, you've watched companies come to you. You probably knew, like, the writing's on the wall. Like, there's nothing I can do. And then you've seen companies come to you and you go, okay, wait a second. Like, we can move some things around. What about a leader are you looking for to figure out if that leader can lead their team through something?
Well, you quoted one of your favorite movies. Let me show you one of mine as it relates to this. This is a really well done movie. It's Pearl Harbor, and you remember the scene after Pearl Harbor, and they're bringing in the seriously wounded troops, the Navy sailors that were really in serious condition. And remember what this nurse said to the other nurse? Encourage them all, but put a red X on their forehead if you know they're terminal. In other words,
oh my gosh.
And Ken, that is really a sobering scene, but I see it all the time. I talk to my consultants. I said, just put a red X on that one. They're done. And it's tragic, because you think, what's behind a business failure? Oftentimes a marriage failure. You have, there's been tragedy that comes out of that, suicide and other things for those that really can't handle this. Thankfully that's pretty rare, but it does happen. You start realizing that when you're talking to someone about whether or not their business is going to make it or not, there is a huge responsibility in how we talk about that and be there with them post failure and stay in touch with them. So I keep a list of those people so I can be there as the best I can to be a friend through those times. And that's one of the things I try to give back. But that's one of the favorite parts. But you let me finish to the other point in your question, which I forgot by now. So if you could repeat the question that you said, because I want to get that in there, because I think there are those businesses that are done. I think when it comes to leadership, I think that's where you're going, is when I see a leader that is making it or not making it. In those cases, I try to get to them, and you ask questions. You lead by the Socratic process. What was Socrates famous for? He's famous for asking a lot of questions. In fact, he asked so many questions they got him killed. They took him out and stoned him. So I guess there is a balance in asking too many questions. But I try to ask questions and draw them out, because when you tell in your training, you know this as a trainer yourself, you can ask a question of someone and they peak up, their adrenaline kind of comes up and they want to learn more because they're going, I'm being called on. So you ask questions and you lead people to the answer that you want them to see. Do you really enjoy leadership? No, I really don't. Then why are you trying to be it? Or if you really think you want to be, then what do we need to do? And then you work through it. And then again, I come back to tools like the greatest, most important elements about leadership is from, again, Patrick Lencioni, you'll hear me quote him a lot, is hungry, humble, and smart. And the most important one of those three is, the ideal team player comes out of the ideal team player, is humility. And I think the biggest thing you'll see is those that are leading early have the greatest amount of insecurity, and therefore they lead with the greatest amount of ego. And that's not humility. So I think humility is the most important thing on there. And there's some people, you ask the question, and I remember being asked the question. I didn't get the question. It went right by me when I was first young, and I was a little driven by ego probably and insecure about my leadership style. And I could go back and look at questions people asked me. They were trying to help me see that. So if you're a leader and people are starting to ask you a question, pay attention to the question. It may be time for reflection.
Mm-hmm. I love that humility piece. I think that's what we're seeing right now is I think a lot of, so many companies have had to make cuts. Like I don't know many mortgage companies that haven't, adjusted and gone through a series of layoffs or multiple. It's the leader being willing to admit that it's just not like this is the road we can't stay on and make the right changes early enough. I got to think that's one of the toughest conversations you have with people, right?
It is. And again, I have a dyslexic mind, so I see everything in pictures. So, I mean, everything I when I'm thinking to someone about someone or thinking about a situation, everything is coming to me in the form of pictures. And there's one notable scene. I love the Blue Angels. I love flying. And the crazier the flying, and that's about as crazy you can get flying at, 500 miles an hour, that close to someone is just insane, 400, 500 miles an hour. And what you look at is how precise they are in their execution of their maneuvers. And it happens as a result of their debriefing. And there is a great YouTube video. It's an older video. It's shot over Seattle when they did an air show over Seattle. I happened to have been living in Seattle at that time, and I watched this particular air show. I was not aware of the debrief, but it's called Blue Angels Debrief. Go Google that or check that out. And what they do is they precisely walk off the get out of the airplanes, march out, as you well have seen the Blue Angels do, and the Blues, and then they come into a conference room, and then they sit down and they do a debrief. What they do, Ken, is they sit down, and it starts with the leader. They all take their hats off, their stripes off, and they now are at a level playing field. The leader starts out, good to be here with you, and he's accountable to what he did not execute well on that. Then it goes to the next one and the next one. And all around the room, they do the debrief. And it is so revealing. If we could just start doing debriefs on a regular basis of our operations, Ken, and talk in accountability, self-reflection, and then asking for input. But there's metaphorically just so many great examples for leadership that comes out of that video. I encourage people to watch it. It's entertaining as heck anyway. Just watch the Blue Angels, so you'll enjoy the video. But that debrief is one of my favorite.
I love that you said that because we just had a meeting. When people start at the company, I get some time with them to just kind of get them to be able to ask me questions. I can ask them questions, get to know people, and they can get kind of the heart of what I'm trying to do here at the company. And I just had one, like literally before I walked in and lit this call up. And I just said, look, I think everything's broken. And I always will think that way. Because as soon as we start thinking everything's not broken, we stop trying to find broken things and fix them. And in tech, it's a constant tinkering. Like it's not that I'm saying we've done a bad job. And I think that's the line I'm trying to draw, like is making sure people know I'm not saying we're bad. No, we're good. And if we want to stay good, let's not look at what's broken. But if we want to go from good to excellent, you have to look at things as where are the broken pieces? And I love that you said that the best of the best in flying are actually doing this as a regular habit. That's amazing.
Every single flight they do a debrief. And I think it's that kind of attention to detail, Ken, that we miss in our industry. I mean, I got to tell you, I work in other industries, consult other industries as well, but mostly 90+% of my activity is inside the mortgage industry. And you look at different companies and different industries, and there's different levels of discipline and I would say almost maturity, Ken, is another word you might use. And I'm not running down mortgage bankers, but we face it. Our industry is a boom bust cycle. We bring a whole crop of new people in when we get low interest rates. We generate a lot of activity. Some people think they're genius because they made a lot of money, and no, it's the interest rates, maybe. And I mean, you got to be good at what you do to be able to sustain it. But I think it's really important that we look at at things accurately. And that's that 360 analysis, the feedback. That's one of the things we lead 360 analysis in companies. Is let's really look at ourselves. And that's sometimes kind of painful. That mirror experience is a little painful.
Yeah, we had a guy come out yesterday, drive down from Seattle, who is doing real estate training, and his name's Nate, really good dude. And we were talking about, he's going in and doing like traction for real estate companies and trying to implement, these procedures and plans and strategies. And we were talking about how difficult it is, the way companies are set up, specifically in the mortgage and real estate space. They're set up by people who were producers, but not necessarily all the time by people who were leaders. And then they have to back into it, but they're still producing. And so it's caused a lot of this struggle, right?
Yeah, it does, and it causes for a lot of the mistakes that are out there that are avoidable. And I think so many of the mistakes, when you look back and what we see what's happened, especially when you're working with an executive and you're hearing about a tragedy that their business failed, and you start saying, "Do you want to talk about it?" Yeah, I'd like to talk about it. And what did you do this? Did you do this? And you start where he says, "Now, do you want to do another one?" Because when that happened, all you needed to do is make this adjustment. And one of the examples is we know JFK Jr. flew his airplane. Unfortunately, he got into vertigo and he started spinning in. He went in, augured into the water. And there's a simple maneuver that an experienced pilot knows what to do to get them out of that spin. And it's a death roll. And so what you can do is just hit a rudder and turn the yoke a certain way, and you're out of it. So it saves planes from crashing. It saves people and business from crashing. I think this is why. And do you need to hire a consultant? You know who I think the best consultant is in every relationship for those that are married is your spouse. The spouse.
Yes.
It's so true, because you go like, oh, my idiot husband or my idiot wife doesn't listen to me on that, so why don't give any more input? And I go, man, you cut off the most important resource. Before I go into a long-term engagement, I want to have dinner with the husband and wife, and I turn to the wife. If I'm consulting to the husband, I turn to the spouse, and most of the times it's wives, and I go, please, can we partner on this together? And he's going, no. Don't do that. I go, no, seriously, dude, we need this. I mean, I'm going to try to find a way to filter it in there. And she'll say, yeah, I'll tell you what to say and how to say it, because I found out what doesn't work. I mean, I think there has to be this honest reaching out, and it can be for your family, your friends, or your peers. And when you have a company, do a 360 analysis. Go to your group. It doesn't have to have anyone else come in. Just ask them honestly. This is a no penalty environment. I'll try not to make it a penalty environment unless you really skewer me bad. But that accountability and going out and talking to people, it's.
It is, yeah. And I couldn't agree more. Like that, having been married almost 30 years at this point, my company is the company's 20 years old, and I've been married 28 years. So for most of our marriage, we've had this, but she doesn't need to be in it all the time, and she doesn't want to be in it all the time. But my gosh, when I bring her something, she's like, oh, well, that's easy. And like, oh, cool. So like third party, right? Mark Green, my investor, my company, he's always able to see things I can't see because he's on the outside. And sometimes we get so bogged down and like, this is the way we've always done it. It might not be right. And getting somebody else's opinion, I mean, I think that like, if we're looking at lessons from last time, every time you've worked on something, you've gotten better at learning like the problem, the solution for the problem. One of those things is just not getting enough outside advice would be one of the lessons, right?
Absolutely. Absolutely. It's so important. And then there's sometimes I teach the clients I work with to listen to their own heart, have confidence in there. I may have an experience that's different and may try to get you down a different path, but I try to listen to them at their own heart. A good CFI certified flight instructor will help the student listen. Does this feel right? And it's getting them to have confidence in what they see and believe. Not that it ever negates the need for outside third-party intervention or input, But there are so many times that someone may be coming up with a better solution. They may have that better solution. I'm so grateful so many times when I'm influencing somebody or consulting or coaching someone that I say, let's talk to your heart about this. I mean, why do you have this feeling? I'm not challenging it. Let's dig in and examine that. We don't have time. Now, if you're in a burning building or in a plane that's about ready to go into the ground, yeah, you just immediate take immediate action. But that's what I'm talking about, assuming there's some time to make there's for correction. So I think we should listen to our own hearts, and I think we need to listen to it. And that's where healthy friends that are in there will give us great reflection. You know, I wouldn't do it that way, but you know what, Perry, I think you got a great idea. Why do you think that, Ken? What's going on in that? Well, and you let them talk it out, and you go, there's either a blind spot or that's validating. Go for it. See what I'm saying?
It's so funny. So many of these conversations I'm having on this podcast, so many of them have referenced the people you have around you. And you and I have been in a mastermind group for years now. And there's been so many things that have happened that I'm like, I just need to get on that call. I don't know which one of these guys is going to help me, but I know one of them is going to. And it's always been like, you know, Kawada will say something that all of us are like, oh my gosh, like, or you'll bring something, or Savage bust something out. Like, having that group, vital. I mean, especially to any leader, right? I mean, can you do it on your own?
I don't think we're designed to do it on our own. I think, Ken, the design of the human is that we need community. We need family. It's either blood, marriage, family, and I think it's the combination. We need relationships to succeed in life, and I think we're designed that way. I feel most sorry for those that are self-made multimillionaires that did it on their own. They're some of the loneliest people I've met on the planet, wealthy and lonely. We need community, Ken, and there's so much more that comes out of it just than the wisdom that you gain from our mastermind. I've gotten to know you, and I gotten to know Savage, and then Kawada, and Craig, and all the others, and Lori. I mean, we could go on and on. I mean, we don't all see the world the same way, but man, is it a nice blend of flavors. When you look at a good cook, I mean, it's just the flavors that come together. Why would you put this and that? Well, you got to hear what it does to the flavor. So I think that's what we should surround ourselves with. So create your own mastermind. That's what anyone listening to this is, go out and get your own mastermind. Get differing opinions. Get different people out there. Surround them to you. It's better if you have some relationship with them. But if not, there's a lot of people, Ken, that brought into this group we had no relationship with. But now we're close. I mean, stay together until we go to the ground.
Yep. All right. I want to talk about failure. So I use the word fail a lot. I love the word fail, and I probably overuse it because sometimes people take it as like, when I'm using that word, I'm saying total failure. I'm saying failure is like, we should be failing, and then we go, oh, that was a fail, and then like fix it. So what was your favorite failure in life or business?
There's so many, but there is one that totally changed my trajectory on how I was going about my business and really set me up for success. I am an outgoing, sanguine personality. I get business. Some people said I was like rolled in double stick tape. When I go into an office, I find loans sticking off of me as I just walk through to say hi to people. And sometimes there's an application there on me. They just stick to me. So that came really naturally to me. But the particular company I was working for said that, you know, they had the model, you need to be able to take the application, process the application, and do all this. And I really sucked at this. And what I did not realize at the detail side of the business, maybe it's ADHD. I didn't realize at the time, Ken, that I have dyslexia. We hadn't tested that, and that hadn't really come out. But I have dyslexia, which means numbers switch. Now, if you're in a numbers-oriented business and you're adding up a column of numbers for compliance to review, and the numbers move around, it's difficult to get the same total when the 3 and the 2 switch places being the 2 times you add it up. So it was really a problem in me. And so I was rocking it on the sales side, but compliance wasn't liking it, because compliance was calling and saying, we got to get it. And the president of the company that hired me was hearing this constantly from compliance, and they came out to fire me. He finally says, okay, that's it. He's our top salesperson. I got it. We're a bank. Let's fire him. We got to fire him. I can't believe I'm doing this. So on his way out to fire me, I'm failing and not even knowing it, Ken. I mean, my idea of a complete 1003 is last name. Most of us scrawl out a social security number, get some numbers down, throw it in the process, say, come on, the next deal. I mean, let's go catch another tiger. I'm a man of good in sales. I don't need to do that stuff. So anyway, it was a pretty mess. So anyway, the compliance, you need to get compliance right. I mean, you know this, you teach this. And it's so important that you get it. So the compliance probably finally prevailed in the president of the company. I'm probably making the story too long, but he came out to fire me, but he was sick about it because he says, what am I doing? This is the top salesperson. What am I doing? So he stopped by the auto body shop of a friend of his. That auto body guy has happened to have a master's degree in business from Washington State University, from the UW in Seattle. And he says, and the president of the bank stops by this guy and he goes, can I have a cup of coffee with you? Yeah. He says, why? What's up? And he says, I got to go fire our top salesperson. You got to do what? Why are you top sales? He says, he can't get along with compliance. He adds up column numbers. We can't get the same answer twice. He's just got some learning stuff. I don't know what it is. And the guy looked at him and says, you can't figure this out and you're the president of a bank? What's your problem? He goes, okay, smarty pants, what would you do? He said, I would buy him a car and get him 2 or 3 assistants and tell him he can never add up another column of numbers as long as he works at the bank. He goes like, duh. So here I am failing, Ken, about getting minutes, probably within an hour being fired. The guy had the sense to go get advice, which goes back to that advice thing. And sometimes it's outside of our circle. He came to me, he called HR. I called HR and said, we're not firing him. He says, did we just repossess a car? He says, yes, we're a bank. We repossessed a car. It's got one here. So he went down, got the car, brought it down to me. It was a nice car, brought me a car. He says, Lykken, I was going to fire you today because you can't have numbers. I go, what's the problem? I thought they worked. I didn't see the problem. And he says, here's the deal. We're getting 2 more people. They'll be here this afternoon. They're going to take over all your paperwork. And I'm going, thank you, God. There is a guy. Took over all my papers. All I want you to do is go out and get more business. And I go, thank you. And the rest was history. What it really taught me, Ken, is while it is important to learn, we got to get compliance right. But if you can get it right, find people around you, get focused. That's where I learned the value of assistance. It's not a luxury to be lazy. It's to go get more business. And I became even more successful as a result of that lesson. So this close to getting fired. Fortunately, they had a chance. They rerouted me. And then I came to the realization of the power of surrounding yourself with complementary skills.
I'm going to go big on this because I love that story. ADHD and dyslexia, and I was diagnosed dyslexic early on, was diagnosed ADHD way later in life. And what I find, and my wife is an ADHD specialist, she works in therapy with people. She runs the ADHD program for a large organization. And she created it and runs it.
Wow.
So what we note is that a lot of people, you go one of 2 ways, right? Either these are the most successful people I know, right? And a lot of people that you and I know that are entrepreneurs, that are business owners, ADHD for sure, and dyslexia sometimes, or they're the people who are the least successful people that we know, and so much of that depends on that leader. So
yes.
Your leader made a change where your life is different, because if your leader would have come in and said, you, like, look at you, you can't do this, Dave Lykken walks away going, I must be a failure. I'm not going to be successful. And instead they went, you are a genius level communicator, a genius level relationship builder, and I don't want you doing anything that you're not genius at. Let's support you so you can go be you, which changes your life based on the leader seeing you for those things.
Yeah, and this guy's passed away a long time ago, but I wish I could go back and thank him for making that stop. I really would like to go find his friend, his Autobahn. I'm sure he's passed away too by now. Because I think what it really goes to is how we can change lives. I think when we're employers, we really have a responsibility, Ken. If you're a business owner or even just an employer, a branch manager, and have other people, you can either make those people that work for you inside your organization, having them have a living hell or a transformative experience. I think it's incumbent upon us to try to find ways to transform lives, which is the name of my business, Transformational Mortgage Solutions, Transformational Business Solutions. And I look for opportunities to transform lives. It's when we take that little extra time, and it cost that guy about a cup of coffee and probably 45 minutes to transform my life. into what I have used now for 50 years. And it's just been, I'm so grateful for that.
And you, I mean, it probably comes up in your coaching too, when you're talking to people and going, how do we keep people in the zone? How do we keep people, that whole, what is it, Good to Great, that talks about the bus seats that you're on and calling those things out. And I was, as a loan officer, I call it paperwork anxiety disorder. It's not a real thing, but it definitely feels real. As soon as they told me I didn't have to do anything but talk to people, that's my highest and best use. And everything got better. But if you told me I had to take an application and that was part of my job, I would have done 0 loans. Because in the back of my mind, if I get you to do a loan, I'm going to have to do paperwork. So I'm just not going to do that. Like, that's the more we can take things from people that they shouldn't be doing and just launch them, the more we can actually make successful both sides. Because for everything that you weren't good at, your assistants wake up every morning hoping for paperwork. Like, give me that person, because let's let them live their dream too.
Yeah, let me share a story on the other side of the spectrum. It's something that I failed at, and I almost missed my destiny out of it. In high school, I was again, gregarious, outgoing guy. I was on the wrestling team, and I had injured myself. So the announcer that normally did the announcing was gone. He said, "Dave, you're an outgoing guy. Would you mind taking the PA system and running that?" And I going, and I had a phobia already of speaking in front of people, Ken. I don't know why. It's just, I think we get attacked. I think we get really, I don't know a better word, attacked in our own minds. We attack ourselves, the external forces, our friends, our family attack us in the area of our destiny oftentimes. So I sat down, and what I didn't realize, we were wrestling a team. I grew up in Minnesota, and we have a lot of these ethnic communities around there, and we were wrestling a community that was Czechoslovakian. Do you know how Czechs spell their name? There's all these consonants. There's no vowels in there. Take that to your English teacher and say, tell you how to pronounce this name. And I slaughtered it so bad. And we beat those guys, and they said it's because he announced our name so bad they were on the floor rolling. I came off of that, and the coach is going, "Why did I do this? Why did I do this? And why did I do this?" And he looked at me, and I was dripping wet. I was nervous. Because I was obedient, I was going to do it. I made a vow that day, and then there was another incident that reinforced it. But I made a vow that day: I will never speak in front of anybody ever.
Whoa.
And it wasn't until I was an adult and I got asked to come forward and share my story and I didn't, and had they told me they were going to ask me to do that, I would have left the building, because I have a certifiable phobia at the time I had a certifiable phobia about speaking. I think there's 2 things when you look at things that we have to overcome. In the case of dyslexia, I should go out and originate loans. But there are things that when you're attacking you that you do need to overcome. And it was almost like a supernatural experience, Ken, what happened and how I overcame that. But I got asked to come up and speak, and they didn't tell me in advance. They were starting to introduce me to come up. They didn't use my name. There's a young banker here. We want to hear a story. He is just so excited about what he's doing. We got him. And so as they're introducing me, I'm going, I can't wait to hear this guy speak. It sounds like me. And it was me. And then I had almost like an out-of-body experience. I watched myself go up and tell my story, Ken, and I watched how it transformed lives in the audience. People came forward and wanted to talk to me, and that was amazing. And it wiped out that phobia. And I go, son, it was just a gift to have that experience to overcome that. Now I look at how, I'm on national television, I'm all this public speaking, and you're one of those speakers I always look up to. You're so gifted. You're always on. I don't think you've I'm sure you have a bad day, at least it looks like it to you, but I can't imagine you having a bad day. It's just such an honor to speak and move hearts and souls and minds. And so there are 2 scenarios: when you need to overcome, and then when you need to go, give that up. Don't do that. And that's where friends come in and people closest to you. No, this one you need to work through. That one avoid.
So pay attention to what others say about you and take those opportunities. I did when I was in the police department, and I was 3.5 years. Yeah. And that was my future. That just, I was going to be a career guy. And I actually it was a speech teacher who walked up to me after a speech class. I had one speech class, and I had never spoken in public. And he goes, "You have something." And I'm like, "What?" And he goes, "Join my debate team." And I'm like, "What?" And he's like, "Join the debate team." And I'm like, he's like, "Just give it a try." Kevin Toohey is his name. And I joined the team, and my entire trajectory of my life changed. It's sometimes somebody calling it out in you. And I think that's one extra lesson we throw in there is listen when that happens. Like somebody trusted that you'd be able to say it because they communicated with you. And oftentimes when you talk to somebody, and I've seen it a number of times on video or in person, where I've talked to somebody and I'm like, you would be great speaking. And then as soon as you put them on stage, like they saw it in you. They're like, you could be great. And then you got on stage and it worked. Yeah. So look for those people that see things in you. And this is hard to do. It's kind of a skill, but to ask somebody, what is it you see in me? Like when you talk about me to your friends, how do you describe me? And start looking for those gems. And my coach, Bill Hart, had me do that. He made me email all these people and what do you say about me? And like, it's hard because it feels egotistical and you're like, oh, I don't need to feed my ego. And I think sometimes we don't know the value we bring. And, we don't know the gifts that we've been given because to us, some things are really easy. We don't know that's hard. And so when you ask people, Lykken, I can tell you, I walk through a conference, I see you, it's hard to even talk to you at a conference, which is why we have to go off site to go have dinner somewhere. Yeah. Same thing with Rob Chrisman, because I see you and it's like, dude, surrounded by a billion people, and it's because of the way you make people feel. And so the more you can be out talking to people, the more you can be, face-to-face, communication, the better. So lean into that, because that's what everybody I know about you would say. I love that guy. Like nobody says, Lykken, I respect him. They respect you, but they don't say, Lykken, that's a pretty good guy. Nobody says that. They go, oh my gosh, I love him. Like that's your gift. And I think in finding that out and taking it in and going, sweet, everything I do needs to be people-based.
Yeah, and it's humbling to hear that, because with that comes such a responsibility, because you have to be present every time you get around people. And there's times you get tired and you go like, and then you all just slip away when I'm not at the top of my game, because I want to be present for every time, because you don't know who you're coming in contact with. That one next moment of what comes out of your mouth can make a difference in their lives. And when it's something about someone else and not about ourselves, that's when we really transform lives, Ken. And you do that so amazingly well as well. That's so great.
Well, man, this has been a pleasure. I'm going to let you go. This is awesome. Awesome.
I enjoyed it.
People take
I always
time
enjoy
out of
the
this.
conversation.
I'm going to go back and watch it a couple more times.
I think I'm going to go watch this one too. It's just really good.
Yeah, you've done so much, man. So I really appreciate you. Definitely for those watching, go watch the Lykken on Lending. Go listen to that podcast, download it, subscribe. Lykken on Lending is available on all the podcast platforms. And we'll put a link in the coop. Actually, you already have links to all the podcasts in the coop as well. So people can get it there. Dave,
where do you need to be?
Thank you so much for your time, man.
Yeah, you bet.
Exactly.
Blessing.
All right, I appreciate it, buddy.
Talk to you soon.
All right, see you later.